Welcome into the Skinny Podcast. It's the weekly Potpourri edition. I'm Richard Skinner, Local12.com digital sports columnist and editor with Rick Boring. As always, it's presented by Blake, the Attorney Mason. We've got a lot to talk about. The crazy Xavier coaching cycle in the last less than a week or so. Opening day is upon us. The Sweet 16 of March Madness is upon us. And, of course, my favorite part of the podcast where you can ask me a question on any topic. Just go to the Xverse, hit up the hashtag AskSkinnyAnything. Rick, I'm sure you're working on very little sleep. I was asleep on my couch last night when my phone rang. It was my boss who said, Xavier's made a hire, and I had to write it very quickly. And I can't believe he actually sent me back. He said, hey, you did a great job. No typos in that. I thought, I'm doing this like with blurry eyes. I don't even know what you're talking about. So we're good to go.
Well, it was an interesting day, certainly. I run Musketeer Report, cover Xavier as a beat writer. It was a big day on that side of things. I guess we can start with that. I mean, basically, here's the situation I'm in, Skinny. I was telling you this before we came on. I've been doing nothing but calling Xavier people and trying to get information on a coaching search for the last 4 days. So I am totally out of the loop and haven't really thought about much else. But we're going to talk. I guess we can start with the Xavier coaching search since we started here already. We'll do opening day, and then we'll do Kentucky in the Sweet 16. I did put out the bat signal right before we came on air if people have Ask Anything questions, so we'll check social media here before we sign off for those if anyone sends anything in. But tell me what your initial thought was when, like you said, you get the text from your boss, and I imagine you went to sleep thinking Chris Mack is probably going to be the guy, or at least he's still the favorite, right?
Well, no, he actually sent me back that it was going to be Pitino. This was really late last night, obviously. I've thought all along was Chris Mack. It felt like the logical hire to make. He's accomplished a lot as a coach. He took his year off, paid his penance, I guess, if you will, got back in at the mid-major level with Charleston, had good success. I mean, Rick Pitino did the same thing, right? Paid his penance, went to Iona, had success, got back in the mainstream, and then got the St. John's job. This one just took me by surprise because I hate to do this, but Richard Pitino is just underwhelming to me. I mean, didn't have success at Minnesota. He did go to the NCAA tournament the last couple of years with New Mexico. New Mexico's a pretty good program. They've been 17 times to the NCAA tournament. It's not like he did something that nobody else had done.
They hadn't won an NCAA tournament game since the what was it, like 2011 or something like that?
Yeah, I think that's when was Steve Alford the coach then? It might have been Steve Alford or the guy who succeeded him, Craig Neal, maybe. But yeah, I mean, again, though, this just doesn't feel like a home run hire to me. I sent you a text. I sent a bunch of people text last night just saying, listen, if this guy's last name wasn't Pitino, he'd be lucky to be coaching at Robertson County High School in Kentucky. I mean that.
Well, here's the thing. That's an interesting point because I see people saying that. I think if his name wasn't Pitino, he probably wouldn't have the New Mexico job.
Probably.
Right? Like he probably wouldn't have gone from Minnesota and then gotten the New Mexico job. However, I think the guy who's done a decent job in 4 years at New Mexico would always be a candidate for the Xavier job. So if he was just John Smith that had done well over the last 4 years in New Mexico, I think that's a candidate for Xavier. That seems like the right type of Midwestern Conference or Mountain West Conference seems like a good spot for Xavier to be hiring out of.
But if I gave you blind resumes of Richard Pitino and Chris Mack, who do you pick? Just blind resumes.
Well, I mean, I think most people are going to go with Chris Mack, but acting like that's a realistic way to handle this Xavier coaching search, like there's a lot more to it than just going blind resume when you're talking about Chris Mack, given what just happened with Sean Miller. I mean,
I understand that. This just feels underwhelming. That's the best word I can use. You wrote a great column, I thought, on the Sean Miller situation and kind of his tenure, his second tenure at Xavier. And I thought you used the word underwhelming properly. I think I'm using it properly too. I don't hate it, but I just don't go, wow. It just doesn't make me go, wow.
I think that's fair. I think it caught people off guard. It was interesting because Richard Pitino was a hot name in this coaching cycle in the sense that he was involved with a lot of jobs, including Villanova. As recently as yesterday, He was being talked about as a potential candidate to land that one. So it was clear that people were circulating his name, thinking about him as a legit coaching candidate for bigger jobs. And also, it was clear that he must have wanted to get out of New Mexico this cycle. So I think that part of it made it interesting. And I think when you look at Greg Christopher making this hire for Xavier as the athletic director, one, Greg is kind of unique in that he has a little bit more authority and a little bit more ability to kind of go out on his own and do this in this situation. I think after running it back with a Xavier retread hire in Sean Miller and it not working out the way most Xavier donors and he felt it should have, or they wanted it to, I think he was ready for a clean break. I think that's what this was about more than anything, was when you think about Greg Christopher's career, He came in and it's Chris Mack, a guy who was a Xavier incumbent, had already been there, had gone to school there, played there, all of those things, had well-established connections and ties to the donor base and people in the city and all that. You're kind of, yeah, you're the AD, you make the hire, or you don't make the hire, but you take over and you're handling things, but you're kind of already doing it their way. They've already got an established way. They've got systems in place, so it's kind of that. Then you go to the next hire. Well, it's the guy on Chris Mack's bench, Travis Steele, and a lot of things kind of stayed the same. And you've got a lot of same people in the program. A lot of those established connections are still there. And then when you have to fire Travis Steele, you hang on one more time and say, let's stick with this and go back to Sean Miller. A lot of the same people, a lot of the same established connections. He's been working in the same environment basically his whole career at Xavier. I don't think it's that surprising that he might have said, I'm just ready for something different. I want a clean break. And from everything I've heard over the last 48 hours, that's what this was about more than anything in terms of the decision between Richard Pitino Jr. and Chris Mack.
All right. So then how much is Greg Christopher's tenure going to be tied to this hire?
Well, more so than it ever has been. I'll say that. Now, one thing about Greg Christopher is a lot of people look at this and say like, like for instance, Travis Steele didn't work out and that was his first big hire on the men's basketball side of things. He should be on the hot seat. Greg Christopher has never even been close to a hot seat in his career. He is the third highest up at the university. He's got
a vice president title.
He's the vice president. So most athletic directors are almost separate. And in some ways, you're working against the university. You're kind of fighting and scrapping to claw away resources and stuff from the university. In Greg Christopher's case, he's working hand in hand with the university. He is, like I said, about third highest up at the entire university. So he's got a lot of juice. And again, he was able to make this decision virtually on his own. He had to get approval from a few people to make it official, but he was the guy leading the charge. And if it's his call to make, then I can understand why it went this way.
Yeah, I do this a lot with, I'm not overly enamored with Mark Stoops at Kentucky at times, and I wonder if his last name wasn't Stoops if he'd have gotten the rope he'd have gotten. It feels like this is just tied to a last name. That bothers me.
Well, a lot of people are going to say that, but I'd also say from Xavier's perspective, they've never made national news with head coach hiring like they did this time. The Pitino name does carry a lot of weight, and it will matter.
I will say on ESPN's site, the top story, not the main, but the top story on the right-hand side is sources, even though it's already been sources, Pitino to take over. And you're right. It did.
Think about that. Xavier brought Sean Miller back out of coaching from an FBI scandal, and it didn't make news like this.
No, you're right.
Richard Pitino Jr. gets hired kind of almost obscurely, shockingly, and it's a big national story immediately. Every national college basketball, and not just college basketball, sports writer wants to get a comment out there. It's on front page of ESPN. It's on actual ESPN like Sports Center and stuff last night. So this does carry juice. And when you're in a transfer portal era where having a big name and having ties to every staff in the country, like the Pitino family basically does, I think there is something to be said for that and how it can play out in the current climate. So is this an absolute slam dunk, home run, nailed it, 100%, everyone's going to be in favor of it? No, I don't think you would say that about this hire. But is it an interesting hire that is outside of the box, that is definitely the AD sort of putting his nuts on the line and saying, I made a big boy decision that I'm going to have to live with, and a lot of people are going to look and point the finger at me for? It's definitely that. And I have to respect that on some level.
So how important will it be for him to get Donovan Dent in the transfer portal, even though he's been tied to Kentucky, it sounds like?
Yeah, I think that's going to be really hard just because, we're hearing the prices, $2 million, $2.5 million, $3 million just to start talking to him. Now, Xavier had no chance at a guy like Donovan Dent before this coaching change. With Richard Pitino being his former coach, with him having said he'd be interested in following him, do I think Xavier's going to be able to land a guy that costs $3 million? No. But if he's really interested in playing for Richard Pitino Jr. still, and he's willing to take $1.5 million, maybe Xavier has decent NIL money. Maybe if Richard Pitino Jr. says, look, this is the guy that I have to give us a chance this year, this is what I want, maybe Xavier will blow 40%, half of their NIL budget on one player to try to raise the floor for his first year, knowing that, hey, he's going to be gone after this year. We'll recoup all that money for the following year to spend in the transfer portal or on high school recruits when we feel a little bit more established and have our plan in place better. Maybe that's a way to rebuild in this new era. I wouldn't expect it. I fully expect him to go to one of the biggest programs with donors that have the biggest pockets. but it was a total non-starter a day ago to land a guy like that in the portal. And with Richard Pitino Jr., now he has ties to a guy like that maybe you have a chance with.
Yeah, no. All right, so let's unpack the Sean Miller tenure if we can. And it was wild. You and I were both doing a radio show last Thursday at the Holy Grail Banks. And
I'm
you
glad
didn't.
you were there to see all that unfold, by the way, so people know like I'm not just making this up.
Yeah, no, I mean, so you got off the stage, and I think I was doing my segment. I got off the stage, and you're on the phone. I'm like, "What's going on?" And you showed me a text, and I won't say it was from, but that it sounds like it's a done deal with Sean Miller. I'm like, "Oh, come on, already?" And then you got a couple of phone calls. You're like, "This is not a matter of if; it's a matter of when." So let's go through all of that, and then I do want you to tout the column that you wrote at Musketeer Report, kind of I don't want to say undressing Sean Miller, but basically calling the tenure kind of underwhelming, and it was.
And that's what I want to be clear with is that was my goal. Is it was underwhelming. It wasn't a disaster. Sean Miller wasn't bad at Xavier. He was okay. He was solid. He got them slightly better than where they were with Travis Steele. I mean, they did go to the Sweet 16, granted, with Travis Steele's players that he desperately wanted to coach for one more year and knew what he had in it. And then you snuck into the tournament, and granted, you did win a first four game to actually make the real tournament in the round of 64 this past year. But I mean, quite honestly, let's just think about if Travis Steele keeps Kaiser Gates his first year after Chris Mack leaves, and that team is slightly better. Like, I mean, they just missed the tournament. If that team goes and like wins an NCAA tournament game because they have Kaiser Gates, and then his next 2 years he struggles in, I mean, like, I think the narrative about Travis Steele is completely different. So if Sean Miller doesn't have that first Sweet 16, and granted, I'm not saying you can take that away from him because he did coach him there. He did a great job with that team and leading a team that had missed the tournament the year before to a Sweet 16. He deserves all the credit in the world for that. But it's also amazing how quickly a narrative can change about a coach because quite honestly, from that point on after the Sweet 16, it was really underwhelming. I mean, the performance, it was constantly felt like Xavier was just treading water to get to the next transfer portal rebuild every offseason. And there was a lot of excuses. I think that's one of the things that I really tried to point out is every year it was like, man, our schedule's too hard. And then last year it was injuries. We can't compete because of this. And that's part of the game. I'm not saying they're not valid excuses or reasons that things happened, but man, I don't hear every coach in the country constantly making excuses for why he can't compete at the school he's at. Then you hear stuff about Xavier doesn't have enough NIL money. Xavier has a good amount of NIL money. I mean, they've been competitive the last few years in the Big East, and they're on pace to be that again with over $5 million of NIL money. So I'm not saying that there weren't things holding Sean back at Xavier and that I wouldn't want to take the Texas job if I was the head coach at Xavier too. That makes sense to me. But his tenure at Xavier, I mean, I don't think it's what anyone signed up for when they brought Sean Miller back. I think they thought they were going to have a guy that was there for the long haul, that was going to take the program to new heights, at least get back to Sweet 16s and Elite 8s on the regular, and hopefully break through to the Final Four. None of that ever came close to happening. It felt, I mean, they had their first losing season since their first year in the A10 back in 95-96 under Sean Miller last season.
Yeah, there's a
To
lot
me,
of
that's
layers
not
to
at all what people thought he was going to be.
Yeah, there's a lot of layers to this I want to get to. I will ask you this: if they beat Illinois, I mean, if they let's say they beat Illinois and Kentucky, would Texas have hired him?
It's a great question. Like, what happens if
They
you
may
have
have
to wait
waited.
an entire another week of the transfer portal
Yes,
out for Sean Miller? I just don't think you can wait that long if you're Texas, right? I mean,
I'm with you.
maybe Sean really blows it up and kind of announces it before Xavier's even played in the Sweet 16. Maybe you just say, I want the job bad enough that I'm going to let it leak and say, yeah, I'm taking the Texas job and agree to terms before you're even done. I mean, the way he went out, it wouldn't surprise me. Like, clearly, I don't think he really cared how Xavier people felt about him with the way he was willing to leave again. So it's possible we could have seen him just bolt, not fully. He would coach Xavier in the Sweet 16, but agree in principle to a deal with Texas before Xavier was even finished playing. I mean, honestly, looking back on Selection Sunday, how worried do you think he was when he saw that name pop up there and said, oh no, we're going to beat this Texas team and I have a chance to go on a run and I might miss out on a job for the third straight year. He thought he was going to get Texas his first year. He thought he was going to get Ohio State his second year. And then this year he finally did get Texas, but had he missed out again, man, he would have been thankful for that new mansion, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, all coaches are uber competitive, right? But I got to be honest with you then. So he fully knew before he even played the Illinois game that the Texas job was going to be his if the timing was right. So
Yeah.
was he all in coaching the Illinois game?
I think that's a fair thing to ask if you're a Xavier fan. Like, I think Sean Miller is extremely competitive. I don't think he's ever throwing games or anything like that. I would never make accusations like that. But if you're a Xavier fan and you know he's already going to Texas before that game is played, then yeah, I think you have reasons to be kind of annoyed by that, or at least start questioning, like, well, what were we doing leading up to that game? How all in was him and that coaching staff?
The other thing that I do want to ask you on this is the faction of the fan base that feels hurt, that it's hurt by this, and that they gave Sean Miller a lifeline, and Sean turned his back on him in the end. What do you say to that group of the fan base?
Do whatever you want, feel however you want, say whatever you want, because I feel like this is more warranted than any situation we've seen in this city like that. I mean, this is not a coach leaving Xavier to go to Texas that makes all the sense in the world to anyone who knows anything about sports. This is a coach who had already gone to the big time. He had already left Xavier once. He had chased it down. He had got his bag. He'd made tons of money. He had gotten involved in an FBI scandal that got him fired from his job at Arizona, and he was out of the sport. Xavier then brought him back, and he told everyone there everything they wanted to hear along the way, that this was where he wanted to be. He would never think about leaving again because this is all he wants. He's been there already, and he saw the grass isn't greener. He wanted to be back at Xavier. These are real things that he told people that considered him a friend. So if those people are going to be upset by him deciding to leave again and feeling like he completely lied to all of them, and including the fan base, I don't know what else you can say to them other than, yeah, it kind of feels like that's what happened. I mean, I don't hold it against Sean Miller personally, because I probably would want to be at Texas too. But again, given the way all of this went down over his entire career, you cannot fault anyone at Xavier for thinking that he lied to them and that he is not a man of his word.
Do you believe if Xavier hadn't given him that lifeline that he would have had another job by now? I do. Yeah. I think he would have been back in.
100%, yes. I mean, it's not like someone wasn't going to hire him,
especially when he was cleared.
He came back to a place that he said he cared a lot about and that he loved and that all of his favorite people were at, and he came back there because it was Xavier, and that's where he really wanted to be. Again, a lot of this stuff is lip service, and I don't expect coaches to be held to most of it. But when you're in Sean Miller's situation and you say all the things you did, yeah, I think people wanted to believe him on that stuff. I think people felt like this is a genuine guy who's had a rough road. And by the way, I think part of that is what made this easy for him. I think when you've been publicly embarrassed and you've gone through something like that FBI scandal situation where your name is dragged through the mud, and you have people that you once thought were maybe your friends that all of a sudden aren't calling back or are saying things about you that you're like, whoa, where's that coming from? I think it does harden you a little bit, and all of a sudden you start realizing, like, I've got a few people in this world that I care about, my family, a couple close friends. Other than that, I'm going to do what's best for me and mine. Like, I don't really care what people say about me publicly, and I know I'm going to get flamed for this on social media, and I'm okay with that. I think going through the FBI situation in Arizona probably hardened him and made this situation easier to do because of that.
Yeah. All right. Anything else you want to add on the subject?
No, I think at the beginning you asked me just kind of sort of how it all played out and all that stuff, and I kind of went straight into the column. Yeah. The one thing that I think is really interesting is that everyone is asking and hand up, like, I was one of the people who said, it looks like Chris Mack. Everyone is telling me behind the scenes Chris Mack is the favorite. So I think a lot of people want to know, like, how did it happen? What happened there? What broke down? And I can't say for 100% certainty, but I feel very strongly that it wasn't so much that something went wrong with the Chris Mack situation. It was that Greg Christopher wanted to hire Richard Pitino Jr. Chris Mack thought he was getting the job. Some of the big donors that Chris Mack had talked to thought he was going to get the job.
I didn't even cover the story like you did, and I had people that are tied to Xavier telling me it's his job.
People were mad at me on Monday night that I wouldn't report Chris Mack, even though I knew it was going to be Chris Mack, according to them. They told me, it's going to be Chris Mack. Why won't you just say it? And I was like, because I think there's still a process going out. I think there are still interviews to be made, and I think they want to do it legitimately. I don't know that it's going to be Chris Mack. The buzz from Chris Mack was coming from Chris creating that confidence with media members and donors creating that confidence because they wanted Chris back. But I don't think Greg Christopher was ever of the mindset that Chris was going to be his next head coach. I think he was one of the options, and Greg Christopher was going to hear that out and think about what he wanted to do. But ultimately, I think his decision was always going to be a clean break from the Sean Miller coaching tree, Chris Mack, Travis Steele, all of those guys, and do a completely new direction for Xavier.
Yeah, I was asked this question: was the relationship of Greg Christopher and Chris Mack good at the end, or no?
The reports are that there was some rift there, but I mean, you're talking about a guy that was at his job for about a decade, Chris Mack. That's a boss that he was working for. That you're always going to have things. I mean, you and I know the boss that you currently have, who I've worked for previously. I'm sure there have been things over the years where we would say, yeah, that was annoying, or I didn't like that he did. Right? It doesn't mean you wouldn't go back and work for the guy, right? So like, I like Chris.
He and I still have our occasional arguments, and we're still good friends. So yeah.
Right. And I think Chris Mack, you can maybe say the same thing. Like, he is an adult. Did things maybe break down towards the end, and then he left for Louisville and did what he did, and maybe things weren't great there for a while? Yeah, I'm guessing that probably is true based on all the smoke we've heard around that rumor. But is it also true that both guys are normal, intelligent adults who seemed like they probably patched it up, and the fact that Chris wanted to come back so bad makes it clear that I think they were on okay terms at this point? Yeah, I think that's also true. I don't think this was like a petty decision being made by Greg Christopher. I think this was Greg Christopher wanting to go in a new direction and doing what he thinks best. And you can say he's wrong in that, but I don't think this was too much clouded by, oh, I was upset with Chris when he left for Louisville, so I won't consider him now. I think that's all I've got on the Xavier stuff, unless you have any other comments.
No, I thought we covered it top to bottom.
Okay. I mean, in terms of Richard Pitino and what he brings to Xavier, man, a completely different style of play. A fast-paced on offense still like Sean, but defensively, no more pack line. It's going to be denial, high-pressure, half-court defense, similar to what his dad's doing at St. John, similar to what you see at Marquette. I mean, it's going to be a different era from a stylistic standpoint. I think Xavier fans will be excited about that.
I just hope they guard the high ball screen better than Creighton did and better than Illinois did.
We'll see. All right, Kentucky is in the Sweet 16, Skinny, so let's go there next since we're on the college basketball train. Play Tennessee in Indy. They beat them by 11 at home and by 5 at Tennessee this year. Obviously, you know what comes next. Tough to beat a good team 3 times, all that nonsense. What is your thoughts on how this matchup sets up for them? Do you worry about the fact that they've already been able to knock them off twice?
I worry about the manner in which they knocked them off, which was Tennessee didn't make shots, especially down in Knoxville. I think I'm doing this off the top of my head. They were like 9 for 40 from 3, and there was a lot of clean looks that they missed. And Kentucky, conversely, made shots, something that you don't do against Rick Barnes teams. You make a bunch of threes. So those worry me about the manner in which those games were won. Like, are those things sustainable that Tennessee's going to keep missing shots when Chaz Lanier can shoot it, Zakai Ziegler can shoot it, Jordan Gainey can shoot it? I mean, they have guys who can shoot it. Maybe the credit should go to Kentucky for defense. I just know in watching the second half of that first matchup, because I was coaching a game that night, so I only got the chance to watch the second half, Tennessee missed a lot of open looks. Now, I will say this. I think Kentucky's gotten better defensively. They're switching everything, or at least they certainly have done it in a lot of games of late, and are doing a really good job at it. They're out on shooters. Their defensive metric in KenPom's up to 46, Rick. I mean, that's insane from where it was probably a month ago, which was around 108.
Yeah.
So they are doing a better job of that. It's not just teams missing shots, it's them guarding. And honestly, Lamont Butler just makes all the difference in the world. I mean, the one steal he had early in the Illinois game where he literally just took it away from the kid like he was an adult playing with a 5-year-old in the playground and going, I'm taking that ball and I'm going to the other end of the floor. It set a tone for me.
One thing about Lamont Butler, he does it so well, but right now with that bum shoulder he has, he loves to sort of like he's leaning in chest to chest against a guy. He loves to deflect a ball or knock it when they try to swing down. He has really long arms, quick hands. He'll knock it loose, and then he just kind of leans into them and bullies them out of the spot so he can fall on top of the ball like it's a scrum in football or something, a fumble. But he's usually using his shoulders to nudge the guy out of the way and bully him out of the spot. And I'm like, man, would you quit doing that with that giant shoulder brace on when the shoulder hanging on by a thread? But you're right. He completely sets the tone for them defensively. The 3-point shooting is such an interesting point because that was the one thing I noted about those games. I think they hit 12 of 24 in both games, or they hit 12 threes in both games. I don't know if it's exactly 50%.
I don't know what the number. I think they were 50% in both games. I don't know if it was 12 or 24.
Yeah. I know they hit 12 in both games. So if you know they were 50%, then I think it was 12 of 24 in both games. And I mean, you think about that against Tennessee, and that's not how you usually play against Tennessee. They are really good at taking threes away. I don't know if we can look at that and say there's something about Mark Pope's system and the way he attacks this defense that allows Kentucky to get more 3-point looks than other teams do. But I mean, it's hard to deny that, the second game, Jackson Robinson didn't play.
Right.
Too. The game they beat him by 11, he did not play. So it's not even like it's that where Jackson Robinson played really well in both games and you're not going to have him tonight. It's hard to imagine on a neutral site and against this Tennessee defense that is usually very good at taking away the three that you're going to make 12 threes and shoot 50% again. But the fact that they've done it twice to him already this year makes you think, well, maybe it is something about the style and the matchup between those teams that allows Kentucky to get more clean looks than most.
And I will say Kobe Bray is playing with a lot more confidence. I think he
is.
needs to shoot the ball. And there's been some games this year where he just simply hasn't shot it. And I think now you're seeing him do some stuff attacking off the dribble for twos. He's obviously a dead-eye 3-point shooter. I think that's made a big difference. I think the fact that they've kind of settled into the rotation here of late too, I think has helped immensely. Maybe I'm making too much of 2 games, but I listen, they didn't play great against Troy, but I thought they played good against Troy. And I thought they played great against Illinois.
Played great against Illinois, and there's never been more pressure on a head coach to win an NCAA tournament game than Mark Pope in that situation after Coach Cal had just gotten to the Sweet 16 out of a pod that included Rick Pitino and Bill Self.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, listen, that would have been the last thing Kentucky fans could have lived down was spending the whole offseason knowing that Cal went further than your team did.
He finally won some games in the tournament, pulled some upsets even to do it, did it against did it in the same pod as a couple of legendary coaches, and then you were going to flop. That would have been tough to swallow. But it truly is one of those weird win-win-win situations, right? Like everyone came out of that situation in a better spot. BYU's in a great spot. Kentucky's in a great spot. And now Arkansas is too. So it's kind of a rare thing in that regard.
Yeah, no question. And I think they were helped by Illinois. I thought Illinois' defensive strategy was just asinine. I mean, asinine. I mean, you're letting a point guard or a guy come off a curl walk into an open 15-foot shot, if not probe further to an 8-foot shot. And they did it time and time and time again.
Yeah, and they are also one of those teams where it's like they were so mercurial throughout the year. Granted, I think Xavier's lack of athleticism and defensive ability made them play better in that second round game, or in that first round game rather. But I also think this Illinois team, it just totally depends on which night you play them. Like when they're throwing in shots and they're at their best, they are really good. And they weren't quite that against Kentucky. And part of that definitely Kentucky deserves credit for, but also I just think that's who Illinois has been all season long. They've been so inconsistent. And so now you're sitting in the Sweet 16 with a real shot, a team you've beaten twice already to get you to the Elite Eight. What's your prediction, Skinny? You think they get it done?
I don't know. I wasn't overly impressed with Tennessee. I went down to Rupp Saturday and saw the Creighton Auburn game and then the Tennessee UCLA game. I didn't realize how bad UCLA honestly was. They just don't have any dudes. So I don't know if I can give Tennessee full credit. But like I mentioned, I mean, Tennessee's got a bunch of different guys that can score it. And they got 2 dudes in Ziegler and Lanier. And when Lanier gets hot, man, he's hard to contain. So I'm going to say Kentucky does win this. And maybe that's too much of a UK grad in me. I like the way they're playing on both ends of the floor right now.
I'm with you. We're both homers then in this because watching them, I just feel like they're playing really well and they're in Indy with the UK fan base coming. Yeah. I mean, I know Tennessee's not too far away either, but it is going to be a live atmosphere there for that matchup.
Well, I mean the Purdue faction too is going to be in there. Who do you think they're rooting for? I wonder.
Great point. Yeah, who do Purdue fans root for in that matchup?
Well, who played? Oh, they play the second game, so they would be in the building. That's a great question. I mean, Kentucky's such a blue blood, I guess, that you root against, right?
Kentucky.
I mean, for them, yeah.
Man, I don't know. I feel like a lot of people in this area hate that orange, though, in the Midwest.
I will tell you this. So where we sat kind of corner of the end zone, about 4 rows up in Rupp, and I love that angle. But we bought tickets on the fly on a Wednesday, a buddy of mine and I, and so we were sitting amongst both Tennessee and Auburn fans, and there was one poor Creighton girl that was kind of sitting in the group of us, and she was trying to egg them on at times when Creighton was making a run. I got to be honest with you, the Tennessee fans, they were fine. The Auburn fans, just a bunch of rubes. I mean, there was one guy behind me that talked the whole time, and I was everything I could do to not turn around and go, You don't know a thing about the game. Just shut up. One point, all year long we've been playing 5-on-8. It's all these refs. These are terrible calls. And I think it was his wife or girlfriend that kept going, "No, that was a foul." And I'm like, "Thank God, the voice of reason sitting next to the idiot."
Thanks, Nancy.
Yep.
All right.
Hey, we've been playing 5-on-8 all year. All year.
Well, they have. I mean, you got respect. I've been listening to KSR, and they agree. They've been screwed just about every game. I think there have been 2 where they got good officiating, but
that's a good point.
I don't have any other thoughts on Kentucky. Do you have anything on the NCAA tournament at large, or?
No, these matchups are awesome. I mean, I honestly, I'm not so sure I can pick a bad matchup. I mean, I guess you could argue Arkansas being a 10 seed, but they're a fascinating story because of Cal.
I mean, we've got all of these chalk games. I know everyone's complaining about that. The NIL divide that it's creating, that it's now all a chalk tournament because all the best teams have the best players and they're winning these games. But Skinny, you have to admit it does set up for better matchups late in the tournament. I mean, I'm not saying that's what I want, but these games do set up to be awesome matchups.
No question. I mean, BYU Bama is a great match. I mean, honestly, all of these are just intriguing matchups to me. And listen, yeah, do we all love Cinderella? Sure. And I understand people lamenting the mid-majors and the demise of the mid-majors. Check back in 5 years and let's see what the 5-year sample size of this is. I mean, this is 1 year, and maybe this is the trend. But I'll also go to this. Give me a mid-major that's won a national championship.
No, that's right. But one thing we did talk about, I think last week's show, the week before, the last 2 years against the spread, the favorites have been 60%.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And that is not the NCAA tournament. It's always been you bet the underdogs for decades. But this is the last 3 years now. It's a clear trend that the favorites are winning heavily against the spread.
Yeah, I mean, we hardly had any buzzer beaters in the tournament. That was a little disappointing. I mean, no matter who wins those are always fun. It just felt like games took on a rhythm where, to your point, the better team was just a better offensive team and took a 6-point lead to a 12-point lead. The other team couldn't punch back.
Yeah, it did feel like that a lot. Now there were some.
I'll tell you, the Creighton game, that whole time for about 32 minutes, I'm like, man, they're so good offensively, they're going to hang around. But then they weren't good enough defensively to hang around.
And that's kind of been their MO the whole time under McDermott, it feels like. I mean, I love them. I love watching his teams play, but it does seem like they just always come up short on that end. All right. I mean, I think that's all I got on the NCAA tournament. We'll be back next week to talk more about the matchups we have left for Final Four. But let's go to opening day, Skinny. Reds start the season on Thursday. I think everything around this year is geared around the Terry Francona impact. Everyone wants to talk about him. So let's start there. The Reds won 77 games last year. You needed to win 89 to sneak into the playoffs via the last wildcard spot. Can Terry Francona deliver a 12-win bump?
Well, so I did 5 bold predictions, and I'll go through some of those here in a minute, but one of them was the last one. I went 5-4-3-2-1, was that I think the Reds win the NL Central. To your point, they only won 77 games last year, but the Pythagorean record, which is basically the runs scored versus runs allowed, was 82-80. They were 16-29 in one-run games. Sometimes that's just law of averages, right? So you'd think maybe a little bit of law of averages turns that around. And also having Terry Francona in the dugout rather than David Bell. I had him bumped to 88 wins. If you go to the Pythagorean at 82, you turn some of the one-run games around. You're not asking for a huge bump from the Pythagorean. I'm asking for a 6-win bump to get to 88. To your point, we'll take it to 89, a 7-win bump. I think it can be done. I think, with Matt McClain back, with a healthy CES, the depth of this rotation, and that was another one of my hot takes that I think eventually you're going to see Chase Burns and Rhett Lauder make significant contributions in the rotation. Lauder right now has got the elbow issue, and Burns is going to start. He's never thrown even a minor league inning to this point, but my gosh, the guy's just got electric stuff. So I think the depth of that and the health of it should improve the offense, in my opinion. I don't think it's a big ask to get to that 89 win total. I just don't.
Wow. I wish I was as optimistic as you. It seems like you feel that way based on the fact that they actually weren't that far off from last year. And if a few more things go right, they're right there. I don't think you're coming off this and saying, yeah, they got a lot better, and so they're going to be a significantly better team this season, right?
Well, again, you give me a healthy Matt McClain, you're better offensively at second base. That moves Gavin Lux probably to third base. You're clearly going to be better offensively at third base than you were with Noel De Marte in there, who's starting the year in the minor leagues. And I'm still really bullish on – that was another one of my takes. It was Matt McClain's going to score 100 runs and CES is going to drive in 100. I'm just bullish on both of those guys when they're healthy.
Well, let's hope that's the case. Let's hope they are healthy. I'm not convinced that's enough, even if they are, but it gets you a lot closer. I mean, those guys, not having them last year was a huge difference in what we thought that team was going to be versus what the reality was. 79.5 wins is the FanDuel projected line, the win total right now. They were 77 and 85 last year. It sounds like you're in on the over here. You feel that's a good bet?
Yeah, I'm in on the over.
Wow.
Usually for me, I look at Pythagorean records a lot of times as if your Pythagorean record's worse than what your real record is, that's a credit to the manager. If your Pythagorean record is better than what your record is, well, then that means some of that's on the manager, in my opinion, and that's why they made a change.
Fair enough. I'll go over 79.5 wins, but I think 80 or 81 is probably where we're at more than likely. I don't see a team that's bumping up 10 plus wins based on what they've done. From an injury perspective, that was such a huge storyline last year. I mean, we've already heard Spencer Steer, Austin Hayes, Andrew Abbott, Tyler Stevenson. Do you feel like this season is headed for another disaster year?
I don't. I mean, I think they're erring on the side of caution with Diaz. The Steer one's a little interesting to me because it just felt like they thought time was going to heal this, and it just hasn't. Now, could he eventually come back and just be a full-time DH? I guess that's a possibility. But I go back to the rotation. I think this rotation is so damn deep that's how you're winning games this year. You're winning 3-2 games.
I think that's where you place your confidence in, right? I mean, last year it felt like they were really missing a middle of the order bat or an extra run producer in the outfield, maybe. The pitching staff felt like it was close last year. I mean, maybe even better than close. The pitching staff felt like it was pretty strong last year. I think that is where, if you have optimism in this team making a big jump, it's that the staff is going to be pretty dominant.
Well, and I'll go to this too. If you hang around to the trade deadline, and I obviously fully do think that will be the case, and you're trying to go for a bat, you've probably got so much depth pitching wise that you can get rid of somebody to add that bat.
And in theory, you probably have some type of infielder that you can trade away, right? Like one extra guy might not be setting the world on fire or anything, but you've got a guy a piece in the infield that's a major league piece that you can probably deal at the deadline if you need to. You talked about it a little bit with just your thoughts on the NL Central, but it feels like almost everyone from an expert's prognosticator standpoint think that this is going to be a wide open division.
I do. I don't think highly of Pittsburgh, although I do like their rotation. I think
just feel like they don't have enough offense, right?
Yeah, I think they're clearly the last place team. I know Milwaukee keeps. We all keep betting against Milwaukee every year, and somehow there they are.
Find a way, yeah. They don't look talented, but
it's like the Mike Tomlin. Like every year, the last few years, I'm like, they're not good enough on offense. They're not going to have a winning record. They're not going to, and they do. I mean, it's a thing. And so, yeah, I wouldn't bet against them. The Cubs, I think, on paper, are probably the best team. I'm not so sure St. Louis isn't probably the second worst team in the division. I mean, if my pecking order would go, I'd probably go Reds, Cubs, Brewers, Cardinals, Pirates.
Yeah, I would go Cubs, Brewers, then Cardinals, Reds jumbled up somewhere, and then Pirates at the bottom. But one thing that's starting to annoy me a little bit, Skinny, and if you would have asked me this 5 years ago, maybe even longer, I would have been like, man, the local teams, they don't get enough credit, right? Like preseason prognostications, I want to hear more people that are high on these teams. They never get any credit. No one thinks we're ever going to be any good. Well, since Joe Burrow's come to town and since the Reds have had like Ellie De La Cruz and some of these new younger guys, I mean, it's every year. The Bengals and the Reds are the sleeper projections, the darlings from a media perspective. And I think because of Ellie and because of Hunter Green, the Reds are always going to be a hot sleeper projection because you can just look at those teams. They're all kind of nondescript. None of them are that exciting in the NL Central. And you say, well, at least they've got some young, fun talent. I'll just pick them as my sleeper pick. But it's starting to annoy me. Like this, the Reds are a sleeper every year, but they're never any good, actually. I'm kind of tired of hearing about them being a sleeper. But once again, I'm hearing that from pretty much everything I read. Every expert has a different projection, but then they say, watch out for Cincinnati. They're a sleeper pick to win this division.
Yeah, but I think when you start with a guy who, and I took two other bold predictions, if you will. One was Ellie flirts with 40-40. I think the one part of the 40 is the easy part, the stolen base part. But I think the more contact he's making, he's actually making contact at a higher rate, and just maturation is going to get him maybe in that ballpark of 35-ish, and you're only asking for a handful more. So I think he's legit. And I think he'll finish in the top three in the NL MVP voting. I think Hunter Green will finish in the top three in the Cy Young voting. That's a pretty good place to start. And again, two guys don't win a game, and obviously Hunter only goes once every fifth day, but that's a pretty good place to start.
I'm with you. And so are every other expert MLB prognosticator that thinks the Reds are a sleeper. We'll see. A couple of over-unders, regular season prop bets to get through here before we stop talking about the Reds. Elly De La Cruz, over-under 24.5 home runs. I think you just said you're over on that.
Over, yeah.
Elly De La Cruz, stolen bases, 55.5.
I'll go over. I'll go over because he's still young enough to keep running. At some point, the stolen base number is going to come down, and it may not be for another 3 or 4 years. I just don't think it's right now. I think he's still young enough with fresh enough legs to keep running.
Matt McClain, home runs, 22.5. Big number, right?
A big number. I'm going to go under, and I go under only because of the potential for the injury history, right? I hate to do it. I think he's going to, like I said, I think he's going to. I had him, if he can play 140 games, he's going to score 100 runs for me, especially where he sits in the lineup.
But I think even if he hit 20 home runs, everyone would be like, yeah, that's fine. That's good year out of Matt McClain. So
I could literally see him being a 38 double, 8 triple, 18 home run guy. That's great.
Yeah. And everyone would be thrilled with that. So it's like he can have a really good year and still not get this number. It feels like the under might be the play here. Yeah. Jamer Candelario, 18.5.
I'll go under. He feels like at times he should be the odd guy out of the lineup.
I agree with that. Spencer Steer, 19.5 homers.
I'm going to go under just because I don't know when he's going to play and how effective he's going to be with that shoulder.
They don't matter, but Hunter Green wins over 10.5. Over under.
I'll go over. Yeah, I'll go over because I think he'll make more starts.
Brady Singer wins over under 9.
I'll go under. He feels like a 4 2/3 inning guy to me. A lot of times.
All right.
Like he'll get you the 4 2/3 innings and it'll be at 97 pitches and it's time to get him out.
Those are the ones I saw that I thought were interesting. So I just wanted to get your take on that. Any other thoughts on Reds or opening day?
No,
Will you be down doing the festivities at opening day? What do you do on opening day these days?
I usually go do the morning show, although I wasn't asked this year. So I'll probably just sit at home and watch it. We have a basketball banquet that night, so I'm going to watch it up until then.
Nice. All right. No Finley Day opening day parade for you.
Man, I've been to one in my lifetime because I had to take the girls when they were younger, and it's parades and circuses, and it's just not my thing.
That sounds about right. Do we have anything else here? I'll check social media for Ask Anything if we have any. Did you have anything else that you wanted to get to? Like I said, I'm a bit scatterbrained.
No, you got through all of it. I mean, I guess we could touch on the Trey Hendrickson. I guess it's not even news that some of the NFL insiders have reported that he may be willing to sit this year if he doesn't get an extension, but that the Bengals want to get an extension done. I mean, give me a break.
He's not sitting.
Well, here's the thing. Listen, I hope they come to some agreement here. But if not, dude, they let you try to get a trade. It didn't work. They played ball by you. No one put a gun to your head to sign the current extension that you're under. I'm sorry, my man. You're under contract. We tried to get an extension. The market exploded on us. Here's where we can go. That is where you want to go. And probably what Trey's asking is a fair price, to be honest with you. It probably is.
Sure.
I mean, when Daniil Hunter signs for $35 million, Max Crosby gets $35 million. Okay, but if I'm the Bengals, I don't think I'm paying that. I just don't.
I'm with you.
If he wants to have a temper tantrum and not play, here's the thing: if he doesn't play, or even has the owie that keeps him out, right? He's going to have to produce at age 31 in order to get paid. It's not like somebody's going to go, well, the Trey Hendrickson of 23 and 24. No, you're getting now a year older Trey Hendrickson who didn't play very much or play at all in 2025. Who's going to pay for that?
Right. People will pay, but you're going to take a hit. That's going to cost you a little bit if you don't play this year at your age. So he's not sitting. The man is full of empty threats. He made that clear last year when he said he needed a trade or he was going to sit out. And immediately a week later, he was like back to normal. So it's like, okay, just let this lunkhead say whatever he wants publicly and just move on without him.
I'd like to play
He'll
cards.
Be there.
I'd like to play cards with him.
Yo, no doubt. The dude tips off everything.
Yes.
Has zero poker face. Thoughts on the new Reds alternates? Are there new alternates out there?
I did not see these.
I haven't seen them either. Normally I would pull them up for us, but I don't even know where to look. So we'll have to get back to you, Coop. Jed Demusi, will Richard Pitino ever eat a three-way?
He's going to have to, right? I mean, it's a Cincinnati thing to do.
As
Jamal
much as
Chase,
I hate that piece of content when everyone gets to town doing the
yes,
Gold Star Skyline thing or whatever, this is one where I kind of actually want to see it.
yeah, I do too. I mean, obviously, Jamar Chase made it clear that he does not like chili spaghetti.
Why does that bother people?
I don't know. I mean,
We
listen,
all have stuff we don't like food-wise.
correct.
Why do you have to like Skyline chili? It's a
Yeah,
very weird thing.
Yeah, the only thing that bothers me is people that haven't tried it that go, oh, that's gross. Well,
Yeah.
tell me
It's
it's
like,
gross
what?
after you try it.
Try it's food. I mean, it's not that
Yeah.
big of a deal. It's like the people that act like it's some insane concoction that you could never stomach. It's
No,
relax. It's
I mean,
meat
it's
sauce. I mean,
spaghetti noodles with a running meat sauce and cheese.
yeah,
Take those things separately, and you're probably okay.
they're
Yeah,
all
is it
just
a
normal.
regional
Yeah.
dish that we like here regionally? We love it here regionally, but don't give me the ucky face if you haven't tried it. It's not like a crazy. It's not like throwing cotton candy in on top of a steak.
Yeah,
and
or
calling
even
it
Hawaiian pizza or something like
right,
that. You know,
right,
people act like it's some absurd thing. It's like, I mean, it's meat sauce.
right.
I get it's got a different taste to it, but it's not that crazy.
Yes.
With X hiring Junior, what is his favorite Italian food dish? I assume they're asking you what your favorite Italian food dish is.
I'm a lasagna guy. You give me a good lasagna. I mean, I'm a big. Believe it or not, you know who makes a good lasagna actually
My aunt,
is
but who?
is Stouffer's.
Oh yeah, I've heard that. Yeah, the just
Stouffer's
oven.
makes a good lasagna. Now I will say when I go to Pompilio's, I usually get rigatonis and their meat sauce,
Okay.
and then one
My
meatball.
my aunt, now the Italians will hate this, but my aunt sneaks a little cream cheese into that
I've heard that.
lasagna.
I think that's
Unbelievable.
delicious. I think that's yeah, absolutely. I
Yeah,
think that's
it's
the wise
really,
choice.
really good. Actually, I need to hit her up and tell her to make us some of that soon.
It's really, and you know what's funny? I don't think I've had Italian food in like 3 weeks.
Do you think Patino's been to Soto yet? Do you think that had anything to do with him wanting the Xavier job?
Oh, it had to absolutely.
I would assume so. If you're going to have a Patino in Cincinnati, you better take him to Soto, I would think.
Yeah, for sure. Soto is good.
It's unbelievable. Do you think Scott Hatteberg's a good player? We'll wrap it up with that.
Well, he doesn't play anymore. Did I think he was a good player? Yes, I think he was a very serviceable player. Obviously, the star of the movie Moneyball and kind of the star of the book Moneyball, because they took a guy who couldn't catch anymore and tried to make and looked at his ability to take walks and said, "We're going to make a first baseman out of him." And he had a very serviceable career. Got on base a lot. I mean, that's the name of the game. Didn't have a ton of power for a first baseman, but yeah, I give Scott Hatteberg a thumbs up for his career.
All right, shout out that. I can't even imagine what made someone ask that question.
Well, I think it was the Jerry Nairn voice that we used to do, Scott Hatteberg.
Oh, I figured that must have been an
Jerry
inside
Nairn's
joke with you on some level.
I'm a baseball guy. So our first baseman's name is Scott Hatteberg. Yeah, that's probably where that question came from.
Fair enough. All right, that's all I got.
All right, appreciate it, Rick. Maybe you can breathe now after a crazy last 6 or 7 days. For Rick Brewing, by the way, check out Rick's work on Musketeer Report, please. He did a great
50% off.
And that's right. And they got a sale going on. For Rick Brewing, I'm Richard Skinner. It's been the Skinny Podcast, the weekly Potpourri edition, presented by Blake, the Attorney Maislin.